Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you're trying to rebuild the engine of a fighter jet.
Right.
But the catch is, it's flying at Mach 2. You've got hostile airspace all around you, and you absolutely cannot afford to drop your speed for even a single second.
Because if you do, you crash.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
crash. But if you don't replace that engine, you're eventually going to crash anyway. And that impossible scenario is the exact reality India is navigating right now with its defense modernization strategy.
It's a massive, massive transition.
It really is. So if you're listening to this, you are likely preparing for a high-stakes exam, or maybe you're gearing up for a major policy briefing. And the mission for our deep dive today is mastering this specific transformation. It's not just about buying tanks, you know. It's about a fundamental shift in a nation's survival strategy.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the pivot. If you look at the data, and we're talking post-pandemic era, specifically since financial year 2022, there is this very distinct dual trend.
The import-export shift.
Exactly. For decades, the graph showing India's military import dependency was just this steady, steep climb. But now, that import dependency has effectively plateaued.
Right.
And at the exact same time, their domestic defense exports are just charting this incredibly impressive upward trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers we pulled for this war room briefing are just staggering. We need to anchor these facts right now. India is the fourth largest defense spender globally as of 2023.
Fourth in the world.
Right behind the U.S., China, and Russia. And when you look at domestic defense production, it hit 1.27 lakh crore rupees in 2023 to 2024.
Which is phenomenal growth.
It is. And they aren't just building for their own military anymore. There's this highly ambitious export target on the board, 35,000 crore rupees by 2025.
And, we really have to look at the structural problem being solved here to understand why these targets exist. Historically, the government's rationale was just, well, we need the best tech to secure the borders, so we'll buy it from whoever makes it.
Usually Russia or Western Europe.
Exactly. But that historical reliance creates a huge vulnerability. If you rely on foreign arms, your strategic autonomy isn't really yours. It's tied up in someone else's supply chain.
So the goal is self-reliance.
Right. But how do you actually enforce that? The government response framework here relies heavily on policy and institutional shifts. The big one is the Defense Acquisition Procedure of 2020. DAP 2020.
DAP 2020. I saw that all over the source material.
Yeah, it's critical. Basically, it legally mandates that domestic procurement is prioritized. The armed forces have to actually prove that no Indian manufacturer can build what they need before they're even allowed to go looking for a foreign supplier.
Oh, wow. So it completely flips the default setting.
Completely. And then they coupled that with something called the 5 positive indigenization lists.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because frankly, positive indigenization lists sounds incredibly bureaucratic. But when you read the actual provisions, it's just a ban, right? There's an import ban.
That's exactly what it is. It's a phased embargo. They listed hundreds of specific weapons and platforms, from lightweight tanks to naval helicopters, and attached strict deadlines. Once that day hits, importing that item is flat out illegal.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting to me, and frankly, a bit paradoxical. Banning imports is it's like cutting up your credit card to force yourself to cook at home, right?
Right.
But what if you actually don't know how to cook? I mean, if you ban the import of advanced naval sensors and the domestic industry just doesn't have the tech to make them by the deadline, aren't you just blinding your own Navy? Do they actually have the technological capacity to back up these bans?
That is the ultimate reality check. And it's the core tension you need to understand for any critical evaluation of this policy. The transition window is extremely dangerous.
Because the domestic tech isn't quite there yet.
In many areas, no, it isn't. But the government's calculation is that if they don't create a hard, non-negotiable deadline, the domestic industry is never going to get the capital to mature.
I see.
If the military always has the safety net of just buying a proven French or Russian system, the Indian manufacturer never gets that crucial first contract. The bans are there to guarantee a captive market.
Okay, guaranteeing a market makes sense. And I know they're trying to build capacity through institutions. The documents mention the IDEX scheme innovations for defense excellence, which brings in startups. And then there are these massive defense industrial corridors in Tamil Nadu and Uttar Pradesh.
Yes, the UP and TN corridors. Those are vital.
Right, because you've got heavyweights like L&T setting up shop there.
Yeah.
But despite all this Atmanirbhar Bharat, the corridors, the startups, the harsh reality is India was still the world's biggest importer of major arms. between 2018 and 2022.
11% of the global share.
11%. So what is fundamentally holding this up? What are the systemic limitations?
Well, there are a few massive roadblocks. Let's start with finance. Yes, they are the fourth largest spender, but the defense budget is overwhelmingly skewed toward revenue expenditure.
Meaning salaries and pensions.
Exactly. When you have a standing army of over 1 million personnel, just paying them and maintaining existing bases eats up most of the pie. It leaves painfully little for capital expenditure, which is actual modernization.
Which probably explains the R&D numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at this, and India spends less than 1% of its defense budget on research and development. Less than 1%.
It's a critical bottleneck. If you want true technological independence, you have to invent things, not just assemble them.
Yeah.
And if you aren't funding R&D, you can't build the foundational science. You can build the hull of an aircraft carrier domestically, which India has done, and it's a great achievement, but the advanced jet engines, the radar suites, you're still importing the core tech.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, to the defense's strategic angle, that reliance on foreign tech is terrifying right now.
Geopolitically, it's a minefield.
Right, because historically they've relied heavily on Russian arms.
Yeah, up to 60, sometimes 70% of their legacy inventory has Russian origins.
And with the current U.S.-Russia tensions and Russia's own supply chains being stretched to the absolute limit, India's traditional supply of spare parts is a massive vulnerability.
You're exactly right. And they don't have time to wait around because look at the neighborhood. China is aggressively expanding its naval footprint right into the Indian Ocean. They are building ports, increasing patrols.
So India has to modernize its maritime and anti-piracy capabilities like yesterday,
Yeah.
just to counter that.
Right. And to do that effectively, it's not just about buying new ships or drones. It's about structural interoperability. Which brings us to another huge gap mentioned in the analysis, the lack of a joint command structure.
Well, yeah, the siloing problem.
Right. Historically, the Army, Navy, and Air Force have operated in completely separate silos. They have overlapping procurement, different communication networks.
Which is crazy when you think about modern warfare.
Exactly. If a Navy ship spots a threat, but its digital network can't seamlessly talk to an Air Force battery on the coast because they bought different systems, you lose the advantage.
And speaking of digital networks, as they digitize everything, the cyber vulnerability goes way up.
Oh, absolutely. The severe shortage of skilled workforce in AI, robotics, and cybersecurity is a glaring issue. Now, agencies like CERT-IN are stepping up to fortify the networks, but cyber reliance is a double-edged sword.
Okay, so this is a lot of complex moving parts. We've got the policies, the financial bottlenecks, the geopolitics. So let's pivot to the answer writing conversion, because if you are staring at a blank exam sheet, you need to know how to structure this.
Absolutely.
How do we interlink these themes? Because we can't just treat defense in isolation, right?
Never treat it in isolation. You have to connect the dots to recurring governance patterns. This entire topic is the ultimate intersection of strategic autonomy at Atmanirbhar Bharat and Viksit Bharat 2047.
So it's not just about weapons.
No. When India achieves a breakthrough in, say, indigenous missile tech, it's not just a basic capability demonstration anymore. It is a fundamental shift toward true strategic autonomy. It means making foreign policy decisions without worrying if your arms supplier is going to cut you off.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So let's give the listeners the actual blueprint. Say they get a 150-word question on this transition. How do they structure it?
For a 150-word answer, you need to be punchy. Your intro should immediately highlight that post-pandemic dual-trend imports plateauing, domestic exports rising.
Get right to the data.
Exactly. Then hit 3 quick body arguments. 1, indigenization policies, specifically name-drop DAP 2020.
Right.
2, the constraints. Mention the revenue budget skew and the under 1% R&D spend. 3, the geopolitical imperative, the China-Russia dynamics forcing this shift.
And the conclusion.
The way ahead. Keep it to 1 strong sentence about boosting R&D and resolving bureaucratic procurement delays.
Love it. Okay, what if it's a massive 250-word essay question?
For 250 words, you expand the dimensions. Intro is the context. 4th largest spender, but still holding an 11% global import share. Show the paradox.
Okay, set up the tension.
Right. Then your dimensions section covers policy, the TN and UP defense corridors, and emerging tech domains like space and cyber.
Then we hit the challenges.
Yes. the structural gaps, the outdated legacy inventory, the glaring lack of a joint command structure, and obviously the R&D funding gap.
So what keywords should they be underlining in this essay?
You absolutely must underline positive indigenization lists. Underline DAP 2020, underline joint command structure, and definitely underline revenue versus capital expenditure.
Those are the heavy-hitting administrative terms the examiners are looking for.
Exactly. Then finish with recommendations, institutional strengthening, and tie the conclusion back to strategic autonomy.
Okay, that is an incredibly solid framework. Let's move into our final revision capsule to really lock this in. I'm going to initiate the countdown.
Yeah.
Give me the 5 must-remember facts from today's briefing.
Fact 1. India is the fourth largest defense spender globally as of 2023. Fact 2. The government has a 35,000 crore rupee export target by 2025.
Which is huge.
Fact 3. R&D spend is dangerously low, sitting under 1% of the defense budget. Fact 4. India still accounted for an 11% share of global arms imports between 2018 and 2022. And fact 5. The major physical capacity building is happening in the defense industrial corridors established in Tamil Nadu and UP.
Perfect. Now, 5 analytical keywords to sprinkle into any discussion.
Strategic autonomy, positive indigenization, interoperability, dual trend, and revenue expenditure skew.
Awesome. And if you had to predict one probable exam question based on all the source material, what would it be?
Write this down. Critically examine India's transition from a major arms importer to an emerging defense exporter. What are the persistent institutional and technological bottlenecks in achieving true Atmanirbharta in defense?
That covers everything.
Okay.
Give us a 30-second high-impact summary. Bring it all home.
Here it is. India is pivoting hard right now. They are using DAP 2020 and the IDEX scheme to build serious domestic muscle. But until they drastically increase R&D budgets, fix the bureaucratic delays in procurement, and unify the military under a joint command structure, their reliance on foreign tech and all the geopolitical risks attached to that will absolutely persist.
That is the reality of the situation.
It is. But before we close the session, this entire analysis raises an important question, something I want the listeners to really ponder.
Let's hear it.
We spent this entire briefing talking about building legacy platforms, right?
Yeah.
Tanks, ships, fighter jets. But if the conflicts of the future are going to be fought and won in the invisible domains of space and cyberspace,
Right.
is India's traditional focus on manufacturing massive legacy hardware actually distracting us from the real front line of tomorrow's wars?
Oh, wow.
Are we preparing to fight the last war instead of the next one?
That is. Yeah, that's a chilling thought. If the next war is decided by a cyber attack on a power grid, a new tank factory won't really help, will it? Well, that's definitely something to chew on as you all review your notes. That wraps up our strategic policy analysis for today. Good luck with your exam prep. Keep those keywords fresh, and we will see you in the war room for the next deep dive.